There was this preacher who stood before his congregation and said, next week, my sermon is going to be on lying. Lying. He said, to help you understand, I want you to read Mark chapter 17. So the following Sunday, when he was ready to give his sermon, he asked for a show of hands. How many of you did your homework? How many of you read Mark 17? Every hand went up. They were so excited to impress their preacher. There is no Mark 17. Now I will begin my sermon on lying. This is Humor Sunday, so I don't know what you came to church for, but I'm going to tell you that laughter increases your endorphins. Now, one other thing they say about laughter I'm concerned about today is that it also increases melatonin, which is the sleep hormone. So I don't think I'm going to have you laugh too much because you might fall asleep anyway when I speak, but I don't want to cause it more so by giving you too much laughter. So I'll limit the laughter a little bit, but just a little bit. A Sunday school teacher was telling the class the story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible. And we've talked about that story before. She was using vivid details, dramatizing like our Sunday school teachers here do at Unity. She told them that this man was beaten and robbed and left on the street for dead. And then she asked the class, what would they do if they found somebody laying on the street, bleeding and dying? Little Sally was always the one to come up with really good answers. And she says, oh, I don't know. I think I'd be sick. So how many of you seeing someone bleeding would be sick? Art imitates life. This Thursday, I was watching TV's Inside Edition, and you may have seen this, I saw two inmates who had just recently been released from a Philadelphia prison where they shared their cells. One of their cellmates happened to be Bill Cosby. And one thing they were interviewed and asked, what was he like in prison? And they said he's the same. He keeps everybody laughing. Now, he's in a very precarious situation in his 80s to be in prison. So what better way to make the best of the circumstance than to laugh? Some of us have difficult situations. Some of you watching on live stream have difficult situations. Sometimes laughter is good medicine. It's good for the soul. An atheist sat next to a little girl on an airplane trip. And she was reading a book, and he turned and looked at her, and he said, you know, it makes the time fly faster, makes things go by faster when we get to where we go if you have a conversation with the person sitting next to you. She puts her book down. She says, okay, that sounds good. What do you want to talk about? He says, well, how about there is no God, there is no heaven, there is no hell, and there's no life after death. She says, that's pretty interesting, but let me ask you a question first. She said, if there is a deer, a cow, and a horse, and they all eat grass, yet the deer excretes little pellets, and the cow fat patties, and the horse large clumps, why do you suppose that is? And he thinks, wow, this little girl is really smart, to come up with a question like that, but I really can't think of an answer. And he says, well, I really don't know. She says, well, then, do you really feel qualified to discuss God, heaven, hell, and life after death when you don't even know stuff? Then she went back to reading her book. Now, this will step on Steve's toes a little bit. Did you hear about the choir girl who couldn't find a singing partner? It might have been me at one time. She had to buy a duet yourself kit. Oh. Steve, how many choir directors does it take to change a light bulb? Don't answer that question. It takes one. His name is Steve. He holds the bulb, and the world revolves around him. Now, church feuds often come up about music. I don't know if you know this, but we get comments all the time. You don't like the music, you do like the music, too much ritualistic music, too much, the old-fashioned music. We need more hymns, we need fewer hymns, we need more stirring music, more gospel, less gospel, so you just can't please everybody. But it really gets bad when the minister and the choir director are feuding over the music. So the pastor of this church and the choir director get into it, and everybody's just kind of looking and don't know what to say, especially the choir members. So one Sunday, the pastor preached on commitment and how we should dedicate ourselves to the church. So the choir director then led the choir in singing, "I shall not be moved." The next Sunday, the preacher preached on giving and how we should greatly give to the work of the Lord. And the choir director led, "Jesus paid it all." And then the next Sunday, the lesson was on gossiping, and the preacher talked about how we should watch our tongues. The hymn the choir sang that day was, "I would love to tell the stories." The preacher became agitated over the situation. He couldn't get the choir director, whose name was Steve, to agree on the music. Not our Steve, of course. And he told the congregation that because of that, he was going to resign his position as the preacher. When the preacher resigned the next week, he told the church that Jesus had led him to the church, and now Jesus was taking him away. The choir sang, "Oh, how I love Jesus." Now this one, a guy walks into a pet store to buy a parrot. The store clerk shows him two beautiful birds. The one is $5,000 and the other is $10,000. So he said, what does the one that costs $5,000 do? He says, "Oh, well, he sings every aria that Mozart ever wrote." Wow. And then he said, "Well, what does the $10,000 parrot do?" "Well, he sings Wagner's entire Ring cycle." Wow. He said, "But there's another in the back room that's $30,000. Wow. What does that one do?" "Nothing that I can tell, but the other two parrots call him Maestro." Now, I'm sure Steve, as a teacher, has dealt with kids of all kinds of abilities in music. And certainly with our choir, he's dealt with us kids with all kinds of abilities. A choir director was unhappy with the performance of one of the percussionists after repeated attempts to get the drummer to improve had failed. Finally, in front of the whole orchestra, the director cried out in frustration, "When a musician cannot handle their instrument, they give him 2 sticks and make him a drummer." You could hear a whisper barely from the percussion section, "Yeah." And when he can't handle the 2 sticks, they take him away and make him the choir director. Steve doesn't tell us to do anything singing that he doesn't do. He can sing and he can play, so we know that you have all those gifts. You're talented, so thank you. How many years? 20 how many that you've been here?
21.
21 years. Yeah.
23 counting when I sang in the choir.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, thank you for being such an awesome choir director and an awesome person. So, yeah. Some of you may not know that Steve retired from the Lee Summit School District, where he was the music director for Lee Summit North High School, and then he went on to St. Teresa Academy, and he's teaching there and leading. He takes kids all over the world, especially to Europe. He's taken, I don't know how many trips that you've made. 15 trips, taking these young people abroad so that they can broaden their abilities and their knowledge of music. And he taught me how to sing, so don't blame it on Steve. He did the best he could. So, my talk today is "Don't Worry, Be Happy." Don't worry, be happy. The song that Jerome led and our octet sang, our gentlemen sang, is by Bobby McFerrin. You may remember that song from quite a few years ago. It's a song that makes me happy every time I hear it. And that's what I love about music. Music is the message. I could not say a word here and just have our choir sing and you all stand and join in, and we will have had church today. Because music brings the message, and music is a language that everyone can understand. Laughter is healing. It really is. It really makes you feel good no matter how bad things might seem. It reduces stress, and there have been many studies about the power of laughter. I was reading an article about Mike Viking. Wiking. He's from Denmark. And he has a program about how happiness works. What does it take to make people happy? And he has a book out. I was reading about him on John O'Leary's podcast last week. And I didn't know that Denmark is rated the #1 happiest country by the United Nations. Now, I don't know what they do, but I have a feeling there's a lot of laughter going on in Denmark. So yesterday I attended my cousin's funeral in the morning, a wedding here. I officiated a wedding here at 2 o'clock. I had family members meeting at my home from Louisiana and Arkansas and California because they didn't get to see Mom, who doesn't attend funerals anymore. And after going and saying hello to them, I drove back down and did a wedding at 5:30. So I had a pretty busy day yesterday. The one highlight of the day was the laughter. At the funeral, several people got up and talked about my cousin Earl, who was bigger than life, and how much fun he had, how much he enjoyed family. He was the one who planned our family reunions for years, and we still have those every 2 years. He was very serious about bringing family together. And his son shared something that really got my attention. He said that his father, who worked at General Motors, always had a nice car, and he had this Oldsmobile, and he wouldn't let the son drive it, but he let the daughter drive it. So the son's girlfriend was over, and he asked would the daughter take his girlfriend home. So the son and the daughter and the girlfriend get in the car. Somehow he had his hand on the antenna, you know those old antennas, and he bent it. Well, the girlfriend felt really bad, so she got out of the car and tried to fix it, and she broke it. So before he could get home to tell his dad what had happened so he could get it all out in the open before he would get the whipping, his sister beat him to it. She was a daddy's girl, he was a mama's boy. So she went right in and told him what happened. And the next thing you know, he's being pulled out of the bed by this 6'4" tall father and scolded, and he managed to get under the bed while his father's pulling him out to give him a whipping. But he got such joy out of telling that story that we were all laughing because at the time, I'm sure it wasn't funny at all. His life was hanging in the balance. But now that he puts it in perspective and he has some distance between the incident and today, and he's thinking about all the things that his father gave to him, all the knowledge and the wisdom, the experience, it's humorous. He can laugh about it. And that's how we get perspective on things that happen in our lives that may not be as pleasant as we'd like. But when we can laugh about things, we can heal. Have you ever laughed until you cried? Or wet your pants? Or milk came out of your nose? Or, that's that real gut feeling laughter that, you feel good afterwards. Now, this isn't a new study that all these researchers are doing now about the power of laughter to heal. I read that Thomas Sydenham, a 17th century British doctor, said, "The arrival of a good clown into a village does more for its health than 20 asses laden with drugs." He's talking about donkeys. Okay. Mules. What is he saying? Don't worry, be happy. No matter what's going on, be happy. Laughter may even be the result of ending the drug problems that we have today. Who knows? Maybe if we could teach people to laugh more, they might be less dependent on substances. By kindergarten, the average child laughs 300 times per day. Can you imagine? They just giggle up a storm. Watch them when they come up on the stage, some of the little ones. They just giggle, and they make you giggle. But by the time we're adults, that number has gone down hugely to 17 times a day. And that's the average adult who does laugh sometimes, right? So we don't laugh enough. We don't find enough joy in life. There's a scripture that says, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning." And when is the morning? It's now. Now is the time to find the joy in every experience. There's something good in everything. I heard of a recent incident. Well, I had a recent experience, actually. This was a real true experience this week when a woman called me to talk to me about enrolling in Unity Urban Ministerial School. And so she left a voicemail message, and I called her back. And I said, hello? And she said, I did what you said, but the cat died. And I'm serious, this really happened. And I went, excuse me? I said, this is Reverend Sandra Campbell with Unity. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Oh, I'm so sorry. She said she was at church on Sunday, and she was talking to a friend about the telemarketers. I don't know about you, but they're robocalls, and they call my mother, who's 98. They tell her to pay off her student loan. They'll help her with her student loan. She's never been to college. They tell her they've got a deal on car insurance. She's never driven, doesn't have a car. They tell her they'll fix her computer. She doesn't know the first thing about using a computer. You know, they just call, and before you can say anything, it's a recorded call. And so she said that she was going to get ahead of this, and this congregant told her that this is what she says. Says the minute she picks up the phone and there's a hesitation, she goes, I did what you said, but the cat died. And I thought, don't be embarrassed, because I'm going to use this on Sunday. So I've heard lots of stories of people using certain things to try to ward off the telemarketers, and they've got jobs to do. For heaven's sake, they're trying to make some money, but it just gets to be overwhelming at times. It really does. In the book of Genesis, you think God doesn't have a sense of humor? In the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, the 21st chapter, the 5th through the 7th verses, we hear a very funny story. It's a story about Abraham and Sarah. Now, Abraham was 100 years old, and Sarah was about 90, when God spoke to her and told her that she was going to have a child. And she laughed. And when they had this beautiful baby boy, they named him Isaac, which in Hebrew means he laughs. He laughs. So don't question all the things that happen as funny, because sometimes they're very serious, but it's good to be able to laugh about them. You know, Mr. Rogers was great for talking about playing about things and laughing about things. So what's keeping you from being happy? What's getting in your way of happy? Maybe you're waiting till your children grow up. Maybe you're waiting to have children. Maybe you're waiting to get married. Maybe you're waiting to get a divorce. Maybe you're waiting to get a new car. Perhaps you will be happy when you get that new house, or the new job, or the promotion on the job. I bet you have a long list of things that would make you happy only if you could have them or you could get them. But I want to tell you that happiness is not an outside job, it's an inside job. You create your own happiness no matter what your circumstances are. You choose to be happy. It's like going into the grocery store line and they ask you paper or plastic. It's a choice. Do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Because I used to be very argumentative, and I try to curb that a little bit now, but certain people like Phil, we get into these little discussions and I have to win. And so I just keep going and going and going. And then eventually I say to myself, wait a minute, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? And I decide that I'd rather be happy. So when the kids were little and we get into these debates and they go hide somewhere, we get in these loud arguments, one of us would have to, we made up our minds that one of us would have, if we got it in our heads, we would be the one to bring us back to center. So Phil would try to put on this real stoic face, he was a Marine, he'd put on this, you're not going to make me laugh, you're not going to make me happy, you're not going to, and so what I would do is I'd call the kids, hey kids, come here, look at daddy, and I'd go, coochie, coochie, coo, under his chin, and he tried not to laugh. Have you ever tried not to laugh? When you really want to laugh? He tried so hard, but eventually he just burst out in laughter, and the argument was over. There was nothing to win. The argument was over. Sometimes you have to try that. If there's someone in your life that you have an antagonistic relationship occasionally with, try the coochie coochie coo approach. It might work for you. It worked for me. So do you fear something? Is there some reason you don't feel worthy, you don't have enough, you're not enough, you've been told you're not enough? Then change the paradigm. You have the power to do that in yourself, no matter what somebody else says or thinks about you. It's from the inside. Maya Angelou said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude about it. And when you change your attitude, that's about being happy. Choose to be happy. Psalm 100 says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Serve the Lord with gladness. What does that say? Don't worry, be happy. And Jesus gave us the Beatitudes, how to be attitude. And in every one of them, they start with blessed. And in Aramaic, that means happy. Happy are they. You can find your own happiness. Nobody has to give it to you. There's an old Arab saying, there are only 3 eternal elements in the world: God, human folly, and laughter. And since the first 2 pass all comprehension, we must do what we can with the third: laughter. Reader's Digest, one of my favorite magazines, always has a section called Laughter is the Best Medicine. Pick up a copy of Reader's Digest. When I'm feeling really down, I watch Saturday Night Live. I record it so I can watch it over and over again, every episode. And did you know we have a congregant? I don't know if she's here today. Ernie, are you here? Where's Ernie? Stand up. Ernie is the mother of one of the stars of Saturday Night Live. Her name is Heidi Gardner. So if they want some laugh lessons, can you share whatever Heidi can share with us? There might be some people needing some laugh lessons. Thank you, Ernie. So I watch Saturday Night Live religiously. I also am a Big Bang Theory fan, and I'm sorry that the last episode, but we've recorded them all, so that's still in my ritual every week. We watch Big Bang. Mike and Molly, my mother loves Mike and Molly. That keeps her going, it keeps her laughing, and that's important, especially at 98 when you're not sure. Every day is a birthday. Every day is a birthday. And to keep her laughing and keep her excited, we both like to sit and laugh together. And that didn't just start. When I was a child, it was hee-haw, laugh-in. We watched all the Beverly Hillbillies. I grew up on laughter. And I love that. When I'm feeling down, I pick up a magazine or go on the internet and find something funny. And if you notice, I like to include humor in all of my talks, because all of us need an opportunity to loosen up, to laugh, no matter what else is going on in your life. You know the saying, that song, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you? When you're laughing, the whole world's laughing too. Dr. Lee Burke did some experiments on human behavior, and he found that laughter triggered by humor increases the power of gamma frequencies in the brain. And these are the brain waves that we experience when we engage in extensive meditation. So if you don't have time to meditate, just find something to laugh about. It'll give you the same experience. Laughter increases our memory, our tolerance for pain, and it's also the fountain of youth today. So don't worry, be happy. I'll conclude with Matthew 6:25, in which Jesus is telling the disciples the formula for happiness. He says, don't worry about what you will eat, what you will drink, or what you will wear. The birds of the air and the lilies of the field don't worry about it. And I clothe them and feed them. Why would I not clothe you? Don't worry, be happy. He goes on to say, don't worry for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Today, right now, is the time to be happy. I expect every one of you today to leave this sanctuary with nothing more in your mind than I'm happy. And I'm going to look for ways to be happy and to spread happiness. You can tell when you're around someone who's happy, they make you feel good. Just being in their presence. You make me feel good because I see all the happy faces every Sunday. And no matter what I might be experiencing, that lifts me up. So when we sing the song, Don't Worry, Be Happy, we're talking about that deep level of happiness that you can only find from within yourself. As some poet wrote, no matter what price you paid, you can't get happiness ready-made. To get the real and lasting kind, you have to grow it in your mind. So let's take a few moments and go into the silence and grow some happiness.